My name is Elaine, and at my own housewarming party, my sister stood up in front of everyone and announced she was moving her family into my $960,000 home. And the worst part? My mother looked me dead in the eyes and told me to pack my bags. But what none of them knew was that I had spent 6 years building a life they could never touch, and by the end of that night, the truth would blow their entitled fantasy apart. If you've ever worked your soul out just to be told you don't deserve what's yours, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story will remind you that no one can take away what you've earned. This is the story of how I turned my family's greed into their biggest humiliation. When I say I earned every inch of my life, I mean it, from the cracked tiles of the cheap dorm I once cried in to the polished marble of the kitchen floor in my $960,000 dream home. I wasn't born into wealth or kindness. At 18, I was thrown out with a suitcase, a half-charged phone, and a mother who said, if you want to live like an adult, start paying rent like one. Only, I didn't even have a bed to sleep in that night. My older sister Caroline had a husband, 2 loud kids, and a habit of turning every family crisis into her personal theater. She was Mom's golden child, the responsible one, the family woman. I was the mistake who thinks she's smarter than everyone. That night, when I showed up at Caroline's door, soaked from the rain, she opened it halfway inside. Mom kicked you out again? Elaine, you can't just bounce around like this. We've got our own bills, you know. She said it while her husband's new gaming console sat unopened behind her. I slept on their couch for 3 days before she politely asked me to leave. That was the moment I realized no one was coming to save me. I juggled 2 jobs, one at a diner, one cleaning offices, and studied graphic design at night. I'd eat half a sandwich, save bus fare by walking, and spend weekends teaching myself design software on a second-hand laptop that crashed every 2 hours. Every pixel I learned to fix, every client I landed, was another step away from them. Years later, when I finally signed the papers for my own house, a sun-filled 2-story just outside the city, I remember my hands trembling. The realtor smiled. Congratulations, Ms. Turner. You're the sole owner now. Those words felt like oxygen after drowning for years. When the idea of a housewarming party came up, it was honestly out of guilt. I hadn't spoken to my family in over 2 years. A part of me thought maybe success could buy peace. Maybe if they saw what I'd built, they'd finally respect me. So I invited them. Mom. Caroline. Her husband. The kids. Even Dad, though he'd been out of the picture since his new girlfriend moved in. I spent days preparing, fresh flowers, trays of food, candles glowing in every corner. It wasn't about showing off, it was about belonging again. They arrived late, of course. Mom entered first, wearing that tight-lipped smile that could slice through steel. Well, isn't this nice, she said, looking around like she was inspecting a hotel lobby she'd never afford. A bit modern for my taste. All this marble and glass. Cold. Caroline swept in next, dragging her 2 kids behind her. Wow, Elaine. This place is huge. Oh my God, look at that kitchen, the kids would love cooking here. I didn't notice the way she said the kids would love it here until later. Dinner started with fake compliments and ended with small jabs. Mom talked about how family should share blessings. Caroline joked that it's almost too much space for one person. Then came dessert, and the ambush. Caroline stood up, clinking her glass. So, she began, we've been talking, me, Mom, and Tom, and we think it makes perfect sense for us to move in here for a while. The room went silent. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Excuse me? I said, trying to laugh. Well, you're single, and we're cramped in that 2-bedroom apartment. The kids could have their own rooms. It's a big house, Elaine, and you've always been so generous. Mom nodded like this was a board-approved decision. She's right, sweetheart. You've done so well for yourself. Don't be selfish, family looks after each other. The sound of my heartbeat drowned out everything else. I looked around at the home I'd built from sleepless nights and double shifts, and they were casually dividing it up like it was leftover pie. "No," I said quietly. "This is my home." Mom's eyes narrowed. "Don't start that attitude again. You wouldn't even have made it without us. After all, who raised you?" I wanted to scream. "Raised me? She kicked me out before my first semester of college." Caroline huffed. "You don't even have a husband or kids. What are you going to do with 4 bedrooms? It's only fair." I remember standing up, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "Caroline, if you step foot in here without my permission again, I'll have you removed. Legally." Mom gasped like I'd cursed in church. "You're being dramatic. This isn't what family does." I turned toward the window, the city lights glimmering outside, and said, "You're right. Real family doesn't do this." That night, they left furious, Mom muttering about selfish millennials, Caroline dragging her kids like hostages. I locked the door behind them and leaned against it, shaking. For years I'd craved their approval. That night, I realized something far more powerful: I didn't need it. But the story didn't end there, because 2 days later, Mom came back. Not to apologize, but to tell me to start packing, because Caroline and her family were moving in next week. And that's when I decided, if they wanted a war over my house, I'd give them one they'd never forget. When my mother showed up unannounced 2 days later, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She stood on my porch with that same air of self-importance she'd worn all my life, holding a clipboard like a property manager. "Elaine, don't look so surprised. I told Caroline she could move in by next weekend. She's got movers scheduled, so you'll need to clear your things out of the upstairs bedrooms." For a second, I just stared at her. "Mom, this isn't your house. You don't get to." She waved her hand, dismissing me like a child. "Oh, stop it. You bought this place because you wanted to show off, and now your sister actually needs it. You're single, you work from home, why be so greedy?" I could feel my jaw tighten. Years of swallowing insults, of biting my tongue to keep the peace, came bubbling up. "Greedy?" I repeated. "I've worked 3 jobs at a time. I didn't take a dime from anyone. You kicked me out when I was 18. Mom rolled her eyes. "You always bring that up. You were ungrateful and thought you knew everything. We did what was best for you." What was best for me? Sleeping in a borrowed dorm closet? Living off instant noodles while my sister bragged about her vacations? That afternoon, Caroline herself called me, chipper and unapologetic. "Hey sis. Just checking when the movers can come by for measurements. We'll bring the kids Saturday. Oh, and we might repaint the kitchen, that teal is too cold for family vibes." I could barely breathe. "Caroline, if you come here again without my permission, I'll call the police." She laughed, an ugly, mocking sound. "Police? Elaine, don't be ridiculous. Mom said it's basically ours now. We'll work out the paperwork later." "Paperwork? What paperwork?" I hung up shaking. That night, I went through every drawer, every folder, the deed, the mortgage, the emails with my lender. Everything had my name. Mine alone. Still, something in me snapped. I knew how manipulative they could be. I'd seen them twist stories before, tell neighbors that Elaine was unstable or Elaine owes us money. I wasn't about to let them ruin my life again. 2 days later, I got a call from my realtor, confused. "Elaine, I just got a weird inquiry from someone claiming to be your co-owner, a Caroline Mitchell. She wanted a valuation for sale." My heart nearly stopped. They weren't just talking about taking my house, they were already moving on it. That's when something in me hardened completely. I wasn't the scared 18-year-old they kicked out. I was the woman who'd built her life from nothing, and if they wanted a fight over what was mine, I'd end it in a way they'd never forget. That night, I opened my laptop and began compiling every legal document, email, and bank transfer that proved sole ownership. I didn't plan to argue. I planned to destroy their lives with proof, right in front of everyone they tried to impress. Because if they wanted a housewarming party to claim my home, then I'd host one more gathering, one they'd remember for the rest of their lives. The breaking point didn't arrive with a shout. It arrived in a small, ordinary moment, when Caroline's youngest ran a sticky hand across my living room couch and Mom patted his head like he already owned the place. I stood by the window, watching them laugh over a joke about how cozy it'll be when the kids have their own rooms. The laugh landed in my chest like a stone. My hands curled into fists so tight my knuckles went white. My breath came shallow and fast. Heat pooled behind my eyes. I could feel years rushing back, the calls unanswered, the slamming door at 18, the nights I sold my textbooks for rent. The old urge, to beg, to cry, to apologize for existing, rose up like bile. But something stronger pushed through, a cold, clear electricity that tasted like justice. No more apologies. No more explanations. No more letting them rewrite history. That night I shut every window and turned on every light. I pulled out boxes and files until the kitchen table looked like a paper battlefield. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Closing documents. The mortgage agreement with my name typed in black and white. Emails from the lender confirming direct deposits from my account. Pay stubs tied to the down payment. Receipts for every last renovation I'd paid for. Photographs of the house during build, my hands on the framing, my tired face on moving day. I read each document until the paper blurred. Each line stitched a narrative: Elaine Turner, sole owner, sole payer, sole sweat. Proof that couldn't be gaslit away. But proof alone felt clinical. They were masters of performance, they'd already spun sympathy into strategy once. I needed to write a performance of my own. One that would hit harder than any yelling match. One that would embarrass them in front of neighbors, friends, and the very people who loved to gossip about my instability. I called my realtor first. Her voice was warm on the other end. Elaine, I've been meaning to tell you, there have been strange calls. We can file a fraud alert, and I'll notify the title company. Relief thudded through me, but I kept going. A lawyer. A notary. A security company to document any attempted entry. I scheduled everything like a surgeon prepping for an operation. Then I did something that felt almost childish and utterly necessary. I sent a casual group text to the family, not provocation, not pleading. Hey, I'm having a small gathering this Saturday to celebrate the house. Thought you might like to come. Caroline replied almost immediately with heart emojis and an RSVP. Mom wrote, of course, dear. We'll be there. Their eagerness tasted like hubris. I bought extra chairs. I rehearsed my calm face in the mirror. I planned what I'd say and what I'd not say. I imagined the look on Caroline's face when the room full of my neighbors, the ones who'd watched us through divorce nights and PTA meetings, realized this house was mine, paid for by me. I imagined Mom's fingers going slack around her wine glass. My plan wasn't about taking their children's laughter away. It was about exposing the thinness of their claims. It was about making the truth undeniable in a room where their performance was everything. I slept poorly that week, dreams jittering between courthouse fluorescent lights and the soft, steady warmth of my own kitchen. When Saturday came, I felt steadier than I had in years, not because I had something to prove to them, but because I finally had something to protect, my life, my name's on paper, the long slow work of my hands. And right before the guests started to arrive, I opened the front door and took a breath that tasted like the beginning of the end. The morning of the party, sunlight spilled across my marble floor, the same floor they once called cold. I dressed deliberately, black slacks, crisp white blouse, hairpin tight. Confidence wasn't just an emotion today, it was my armor. The doorbell rang at exactly 5:02 p.m. First came Mom, carrying a pie-like piece was baked inside it. Behind her, Caroline and her husband Tom lugged in bags as if they were moving in for real. Their kids ran through the hallway, squealing with excitement. We figured we'd get the kids familiar with their new home, Caroline said sweetly, setting her purse on the counter like it already belonged there. Funny, I said, smiling. I thought we were here for a celebration, not a relocation. She laughed. Oh, Elaine. Don't be dramatic. I said nothing. I simply handed her a glass of wine and gestured toward the living room where a dozen guests, mostly neighbors, my realtor, and one of my colleagues, were already mingling. My lawyer, a quiet, gray-haired woman named Mara, stood by the mantel, pretending to scroll her phone. The room hummed with polite conversation until Caroline, predictably, took center stage. "We're so thrilled to finally be here," she announced, clinking her glass. "The kids already picked out their bedrooms upstairs. I guess it's official, the Mitchells are moving in." Laughter rippled, half confused, half awkward. My stomach flipped, not from fear, but satisfaction. Right on cue. I stepped forward, calm as stone. "Actually," I said, "that's not quite true." The chatter faded. Caroline blinked. "What do you mean?" I set down my drink and turned toward Mara. "Mara, could you hand me those documents, please?" She handed me a neatly clipped folder. I opened it, my voice steady. "This is the official deed for the property at 1416 Haven Drive. Purchased solely under Elaine Turner. Not Caroline Mitchell. Not anyone else." Mara nodded, confirming. "All records and funds are in Ms. Turner's name. There are no co-owners, no joint signatories." The color drained from Caroline's face. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Mom's jaw went slack. You had to make a scene?" Mom sputtered. "We're family." I smiled gently. "Exactly. And family doesn't steal, lie, or falsify ownership." "Oh, and speaking of that." I gestured to my realtor, who stepped forward, holding up her phone. "We've also filed a fraud alert with the title company," she said. "Any future attempts to claim this house illegally will be treated as criminal fraud." A murmur spread across the guests. One neighbor whispered, "Wait, she tried to take her house?" Another muttered, "That's insane." Caroline's fake smile cracked. "Elaine, this is humiliating." "No," I interrupted softly. "This is accountability." Mom stood up abruptly, her pie forgotten on the counter. "You've embarrassed your family for nothing." I met her eyes. "No, Mom. I protected myself from my family, for once." The silence that followed was sharper than any scream. The guests looked away, awkward, as Mom and Caroline gathered their things and rushed out. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled, long and deep. The air finally felt mine again. Mara leaned close and whispered. "That was graceful. You didn't need to raise your voice once." And she was right. Revenge didn't always come with shouting or chaos. Sometimes, it came with calm, calculated truth, and a room full of witnesses. The door clicked shut behind them like a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't been allowed to finish for years. For a moment the house was quieter than it had ever been, the echo of heels down the hallway, the silence after a slammed argument. I could feel my heart still thudding, my palms sticky from the wine glass I'd been holding. Relief arrived slow and honest, not performative. It felt like breath after holding it underwater. Neighbors drifted back toward me with awkward smiles and tentative congratulations. A woman from next door, Mrs. Alvarez, who had once handed me a casserole after my roof leaked, squeezed my hand and said, "You did the right thing, Elaine." Her words landed soft and steady. It was validation, but not the kind I'd chased. This felt truer. Over the next week the fallout unfolded in small, humiliating ways for them and liberating ways for me. Caroline called twice, once to beg, once to blame. I let both go to voicemail. Mom texted long messages stitched together with guilt and entitlement. I read them once and then archived them. The title company called to confirm their fraud alert and told me they'd block any suspicious filings. My realtor sent another email. Neighbors had been called by a relative of Caroline who'd tried to spin a story, but the documents, the bank transfers, the notarized signatures were irrefutable. Word traveled exactly where it needed to. through the same grapevine my family loved to use. A week later, at the PTA meeting where Caroline tried to look composed, she sat red-faced as whispers floated past her. The kids overheard adults talking about the audacity, and for the first time, Caroline's performance cracked in public. She'd tried to weaponize family loyalty as entitlement. In the end, her weapon turned brittle. Revenge, as I'd planned it, wasn't about orchestrating their ruin. It was about restoring the dignity they'd tried to steal. I watched Caroline's inflated sense of entitlement deflate in the same rooms where she once presided like royalty. Mom, confronted with the reality that she couldn't buy control over my life, showed the kind of small, slinking apologies she'd perfected, a text here, a quick call there, none of it sincere enough to undo decades. On quiet nights, I'd stand in my kitchen and run my thumb along the counter I'd paid for with overtime tips and late-night freelance gigs. The marble didn't hum with money, it hummed with labor. The house didn't feel like something to defend, it felt like proof that I had built a life with my hands and mind. That truth was more satisfying than any spectacle. So what did I learn? That boundaries aren't rude, boundaries are survival. That justice doesn't always roar, sometimes it's a quiet stacking of facts until the story collapses under its own lies. And that the people who try to take from you will often reveal themselves, not because you shout, but because you show them the receipts. If someone in your life ever tries to rewrite your story, remember this: your life is a ledger of choices and work. Keep your proof, set your boundaries, and don't let anyone rewrite the truth. Real power isn't loud, it's persistent. If Elaine's comeback gave you chills, hit like and subscribe, and tell us in the comments, have you ever had to prove what was yours? Share your story. We read every comment, and your truth might be the next story we tell.